And welcome. Thank you for coming.
Well, thanks for having me, and good morning out there. Hope you folks are having a good day.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day. Another beautiful day in Lake County. Can't complain about the weather here, can we?
No, there's a lot that you cannot complain about it, but there's also a lot to complain about.
Well, riding in today, I said to Peter, we got to stop complaining about everything we see bad, because it just sounds like that's all we do is complain. But if you don't say something, how do we know to fix it?
Well, it's more... You can complain, but you also have to take action.
Exactly.
That's the deal.
Exactly.
I mean, if you want change, it is not going to happen without the participation of the majority of the people.
Exactly.
That's an absolute necessity, and I think that's coming around, actually. I'm feeling really hopeful. I see more and more people asking questions and informing themselves and getting involved, and that is...
They're waking up. That's what I look at.
They are.
Yeah.
We have to wake up the sleeping giant here in this county, because in my opinion, we are at a crossroads, and we're either going to take this county back from the corrupt political system that has run it for decades, or we can stay here and be cowed by them, or we can leave. I mean, those choices to me are pretty clear. Having to leave is not a good choice. Succumbing to being cowed is not a good choice. So to fight back, I think, is the right thing to do. I was listening to Phil, and I was surprised that he sounded surprised.
Well, we've got to give everyone a benefit of the doubt.
It has been going on for years here, the same way.
This is the status quo, the way of doing business in the county. There are a lot of backroom deals, a lot of things that are hashed in privacy behind a cloak, and that shouldn't be like that. There are laws like the Brown Act and others that prohibit this type of adventure from occurring, but apparently, either they're unfamiliar with these laws, or they just choose to ignore them.
Well, I think on that subject, though, it's one thing where elected officials do things like that, because that's politics. It happens at every level of politics, federally all the way down. But when you're a civil servant getting a paycheck that's been hired by the county, and they're putting if it's true, though, I'm not saying it is, but putting their personal views on company time, that's not appropriate.
Views,
yeah, that's not right.
Well, I disagree with you. I mean, you're right. I agree with you that a bureaucrat or a civil service employee should not be involved in that, but neither should politicians. I agree.
I agree.
I'm not going to sit here and give politicians a pass. You're right. It is the status quo in this country, not just in this county, to allow politicians to have a wide berth for doing things that work against the interests of the people. But you have to understand that is in fact the definition of corruption. When you put your own interests in front of the interests of the people, you're involved in corruption, and that needs to be stopped. And that's why I've been advocating and pushing for a public corruptions unit in the district attorney's office. Now, as it stands right now, the district attorney is, as outrageous as it gets as far as his conduct, and that's not going to happen. Since he himself is involved in public corruption, I don't see him at any point in time changing his views and going after public corruption. So, we need to address that. The office that I hold and the office of district attorney those are the two most powerful positions in any local government, and I think there's no question about that. But they have to work together with a goal of protecting the people, public safety, but also to institutionalize a process where there is fairness across the board for everyone, so that people who are connected or have some type of special status, whatever you want to call it, the old boys club, as
cronyism,
the people like that aren't given a regular pass, and that other people are subject to either the law or some variation of the law based on how outspoken they are and whether they keep their mouth shut or not. That erodes the entire system of democracy. It erodes the people's trust in the government, and it's just bad business straight across the board.
And I know this is your interview, but I was going through Andre Ross's website last night, looking at his resume and his thing, and he said it very, very clearly, defining what a prosecutor is allowed to do from a moral, ethical, and legal point of view, and then what a defending help me here. Attorney working for the defendant.
Defense attorney.
Right, what they're allowed to do and how they're allowed to push the envelope. And it was interesting how he described what the prosecutor's supposed to do. And if the prosecutor did what he wrote all the time, I think we'd have what you're looking for, fairness in the prosecution of people and making sure the innocent aren't also prosecuted.
That's why I say if you have a good DA, it really doesn't matter who the sheriff is, because he's going to do the right thing.
But realize that unfortunately...
Nothing personal there, Frank.
No, I mean, I don't take any of this personally. If I did, I'd go crazy. Realize that the problem really stems from a legislative act that happened many, many, many years ago that gave a DA basically the same status as a judge, which is absolute immunity.
Right.
Where law enforcement enjoys qualified immunity. In other words, if you're not acting out of malice and you make a mistake and you've violated somebody's rights or done something improper, you enjoy qualified immunity. So there's a balancing act there where the situation is looked at and the motives are examined to see what exactly happened. With DAs and judges also, they enjoy absolute immunity. So even if there was malice, a forethought involved in the actions of the district attorney, let's say that they actually prosecuted somebody or did something against someone with malice aforethought that was meant to harm them, which would generally be actionable, at least civilly.
Right.
They enjoy absolute immunity against that, and that gives them the power of a king.
But they can be disbarred, though.
Well, that's separate and distinct. That's an action that would originate from the State Bar Association. And again, you have another problem there, which is that the State Bar Association and the disciplinary board for the State Bar Association is filled with lawyers, and so these are self-protecting interests. They're not going to throw each other under the bus because none of them know when the other one might have a problem.
Right. Now that brings me to the biggest issue that your last 3 to 4 years has faced, which was the Brady letter that was placed on you. I happened to see the letter that was done by Captain Bauman originally regarding the incident of the welfare check that went wrong, basically, and the statement by Sober Eye and everything that was in the investigation. And he comes out saying basically that you thought your life was being threatened, you were justified in what you did, blah, blah, blah. Well, that was, 2008 that report came out.
It not only says that, it says that my actions were justified and within policy and that the case is closed forever.
Exactly. Why would a DA take that and try to reopen that case when it was clearly stated that everything was as it should be, and then turn it into a Brady issue?
Well, that's a multi-prong answer, and I'll give it to you in just a minute. But I want to read the last sentence of this letter that cleared me. It says, the circumstances surrounding that incident have been thoroughly investigated in accordance with the fatal incident protocol, and it has been determined that your actions were appropriate, justified, and in accordance with department policy. No further action shall be taken, and you may consider the matter closed.
Exactly.
Now, in accordance with department policy, it's certain the accusation that I lied is certainly wouldn't be in accordance with department policy. So what they did was reopen a almost 5-year-old incident, and they did it with some very specific objectives in mind. If you look at the way that this went down, let me just give you this timeline. The Brady decision was filed by Don Anderson on February 19, 2013. The no confidence vote by the Board of Supervisors was initiated by Rob Brown and Anthony Farrington, was done on March 19, 2013, 30 days later.
Right.
The recall was filed on March 20th, 2013, one day after the no confidence vote.
Interesting.
And Brian Martin announced his candidacy for sheriff on March 24th, 2013, 4 days after that.
Wow.
That's a timeline that should be alarming to any citizen. And again, we go back to the absolute immunity of the district attorney.
Exactly.
If he was subject to being sued or having some type of repercussions for taking this kind of action, then he might think twice about it. But since he enjoys absolute immunity, and he exercised that immunity when I tried to fight this Brady decision, and that's how he got it to stick, it would have been a different outcome. But the bottom line, the reason, to get back to your question, the reason for all of this was multi-pronged. Number one is they needed to undermine my word. I was criticizing the DA for right from the giddy up, from the Justin Lassard sweetheart deal for the pedophile, to giving his daughters passes for committing felony acts, to protecting Navarro, to not prosecuting or ignoring people who he had problems with who were victims of crimes, to dismissing crimes, to not prosecuting cases. In his own words, there isn't 100% certainty of a conviction. Now he comes out touting all his convictions. Well, if you can set up any type of statistic to look how you want it to look, and he told me that himself. I mean, I heard that come out of his own mouth. He won't prosecute any case that isn't 100% sure that he'll get a conviction. So, all these...
Well, I guess in some ways that's good because he's not wasting tax dollars on frivolous suits, but by the same token, he needs to work hard to get the evidence to do the cases.
No, Terry, not at all. There is never a 100% chance of anything in this life. There's not a 100% chance that you're going to wake up tomorrow morning. There isn't a 100% chance that you'll make it through the day. There isn't a 100% chance of anything. Life has a lot of perils, and any process that you're involved in is going to have some risk of failure. And to say that you have to have 100% chance of conviction before you take an individual to trial is absurd, because that doesn't exist. The 100% isn't there. So in the totality of the circumstances, what you have is an individual who is intellectually, morally, and ethically corrupt, and possibly criminally corrupt. But the problem that you have is the Attorney General's office and others here in this state are just not interested in getting into the politics in Lake County because they're frankly too dirty.
Okay, that takes me to the next subject, which is, and I know you have a list of questions, but I'm just kind of going with the flow of the conversation, which is the investigation into the possible misuse of RIMS by the state, and the response and the request that the county have this audit done by the state. And what is the status on that, and where are we at this time?
I have requested the state to look at the situation with RIMS, and they're in the process of doing that. I can't go any further into that because it would be inappropriate, but I made a formal request. Obviously, Don Anderson has not joined me in that, although the board asked him to.
Right.
And RIMS is a really, it's an interesting issue. Let me just start with this. I'm not alone in this fight. Okay, I'm not alone in this fight with RIMS by any stretch of the imagination. And when I say I'm not alone as far as other places within the United States.
Oh yeah, we have shared articles about other officers and other places where that's been misused.
Police abuses.
Yeah.
And I want to say that Don Anderson made a statement during the debate over at the board chambers that was absolutely false. He said that I had canceled RIMS because there was 3,000 inquiries. Most of the inquiries involved changing of an address or some ministerial task. The number was actually 8,000, and it was in 70 days.
Wow.
So
that's a lot of address changes.
Yeah. I don't think the post office gets that, like statewide. So it's some of these arguments are absurd on their face, and it doesn't take much thought to dismiss them as either a lie or just something that's meant to completely obfuscate the subject, to make it to put the big cloud of smoke in front of it.
Right.
But I want to just kind of briefly touch over some cases that are going on throughout the United States that involve abuse of police databases, and RIMS is a police or law enforcement database. Here we have one: FBI files sold to mob and international criminals by Nevada Attorney General's office employee and former FBI agent. Rookie cop checks on, quote, potential girlfriend, 6,900 database searches in only 2 months. Indiana PD banned from FBI database.
Oh, right.
Political candidates probed by chief of police.
Whoa.
Police investigated for using database to target organizers of sheriff's recall campaign. Prosecutor's office uses database to smear prosecutors' political opponents. Now, this is a particularly interesting one, so I'm going to stop there, although the list goes on and on and on. And
I get the FBI reports. I see that.
And I welcome the listeners to do their own research, because just Google police abuse of law enforcement databases, or any combination of those words, and
Sure.
and you'll see how many different instances go on. So this isn't unique to Lake County. This isn't something that I dreamed up to cause them problems. But let's stop with prosecutor's office uses database to smear political opponents. And the blurb on it is, and you can get the whole story online. It says the Butler County Republican Party has asked the county commission to investigate allegations that an employee of the prosecutor's office misused a state database to obtain information about his boss's political opponent. Well, that really hits at the heart of my point about how this system has been historically used in this county. When someone speaks out, when somebody disagrees with the system, the tradition here in this county is to attack them and destroy them.
Right.
Yes. We know that.
That's
We're personally
we know that very
related
well.
to that whole system.
that's a tradition. And
Yeah.
and sometimes they make the thing out of whole cloth. And other times they'll have a grain of truth that they spin into some story that is absolutely not true. But where are they getting this information? And I've had complaints from people who have said, why is it that, early on, not anymore really, because I've reined this in considerably and I monitor it every day. But, how is it possible that some individual is spreading a rumor that, should be law enforcement sensitive? Where did they get this information?
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
where they got this information was from the database, because somebody who knew somebody had access to the database and was able to garner the information illegally, because it's a two-prong process that you have to go through to see if you are able to access this information. One of them is a right to know, and if you're in law enforcement, you're pretty much covered with that. But then the second one, and the more important one, in my opinion, is the need to know.
Exactly.
So, if you're using it for a legitimate law enforcement purpose, then you have the need to know, and that's fine. You can access the information. But if you're using the information to target a political opponent, or to target somebody who is speaking out and exercising their First Amendment rights, or using the information to hurt someone in retaliation for some, slight or whatever, in other words, for political purposes, that is not only wrong, it's illegal. So I have an obligation as the holder of the keys, as you would have it, to make sure that that doesn't happen. And that's what I did, and I've been, thoroughly maligned. To go into details here in this county, you look at the Purdock case. Purdock admitted that he was overseeing his own investigation into the boating accident by looking into RIMS and seeing what was filed by the detectives whom he was the boss of, which is, there are so many ironies involved in that, and so many missteps that I could do a radio show on that issue alone. You have the Navarro case, where he's having a continuing sexual relationship with a girl who's 13, 14 years old, and he's looking up her mother and her, I think her uncle and her. In other words, as this continuing sexual relationship is going on, he is monitoring, making sure that there's no reports that are being made on it. I mean, those are instances. You have the DA 8,000 views in 70 days. By 4 people, by the way. So that's a lot. You think about it. That's a lot of inquiries. And by the way, the DA said and told my office that he was going to do an internal affairs investigation or an investigation concerning this issue, and to date, this was early on, like this is 2011, to date he has not released the findings of that investigation. And I challenge him to do so here on this radio show right now. Release the findings of your investigation and let the public see it, and let us have a chance to examine it and scrutinize it and see what came of it.
Okay, well, we do have a caller. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Frank, Lenny.
Hey, Lenny, how are you?
Good. So what would you do with RIMS? How would you make changes so that it wouldn't be abused? And I'll take it off the air.
Thank you, Lenny.
Well, we've begun that process already by doing an audit and seeing where the problems are, because you have to identify the problems before you can solve them. And one of the things that the RIMS does not contain within the program itself that I have asked the manufacturer, Sunridge Systems, to consider putting in is something similar to what you have in CLETS and NCIC, which is every time you make an inquiry into RIMS, you put your identification number in there, and or
so it's a tracking mechanism.
Not the officer's identification number, but the identification number of what you're working on. In other words, a case number, or you put a reason in it. This is for investigation. This is for a wanted subject,
makes sense,
and then it would make the auditing of it a lot easier. Because right now that doesn't exist within the RIM system. I was told by Sunridge that wasn't really possible, and I'm not a computer.
If it's a database, it's possible.
Yes, I'm not a computer guy. I don't claim to be a computer expert, but it just doesn't, from a basic common sense perspective, that does not make sense.
That usually translates to it's more work than it's worth for them.
No, I actually think it translates into something different. I think that they have a very captured audience. The RIMS is one of the most popular systems that is used as a database by law enforcement, and I don't think that would go over very well with a lot of places.
Well,
so in other words, why bat the hornet's nest when the only request that you're getting is from the Lake County Sheriff?
Exactly.
I mean, again, I'm speculating on that, but the answer that I was given. It just made absolutely no sense. It's a database, and you can create different criteria for that database. So I don't see why that would be a problem.
But in that program, also, are there not levels of access that you can set so that people cannot get into maybe more sensitive material or more detailed material?
There are, and I've done that already. We do have levels of access, and that's already in place, along with auditing and many other checks and balances that I've established since I took over the Lake County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, I'm sorry, but he keeps driving me into these next questions.
Well, I'd like to get into some subjects that are not normal and common that everyone's already heard.
Well, the one thing that I did want him to comment to was the audit that was done for the safe that was left that people were accessing. What kind of changes were made to correct that problem?
Well, we've instituted different policies to address that, but we also have it under investigation ourselves.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Go ahead, unless you want to go to the caller.
No, go to the caller. That's fine.
Hello, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First, I have to say thank you, Phil, for calling in and giving that report. I'm just appalled of Jeff Smith's actions.
Okay,
can we... Yeah,
Kathy, we have to stay with the sheriff if you have a question for him.
Yeah, Sheriff, what do you think about, I don't know if you can comment, about Brian Martin running and his father being a judge and stuff, conflict of interest and so forth, and then in cahoots with Don Anderson, and again what you brought up about his daughter 2 times with domestic violence, and last 2 years in that case hasn't been prosecuted as well.
Well, I think that generally speaking, nepotism and cronyism is rampant in this county. You know, you need a scorecard to keep track of who's related to whom from one department to another. It seems like they only hire family or friends or people who are supporters, and that shuts the door in the face of many other people who would be well qualified for these jobs, but hit a brick wall when they go to apply because there's somebody in front of them that happens to have connections. So I oppose that. I think that that's wrong because this is civil service and everyone should have equal opportunity to access employment. The issue about the people who are given a pass, for lack of a better word, such as Don Anderson's daughters. You know, he claims he sent this to the AG's office, but and that the AG's office refused to prosecute her or drop the case, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, she was arrested twice for domestic violence. The second time, she hit her boyfriend with a rock over the side of the head. Yeah. You know, most people would be in prison for that, and that again goes back to the two-tier system of justice. He said he sent it to the AG's office. What he failed to tell you is how much influence the DA has over the decisions of the AG as to whether they will prosecute a particular case or not. The Attorney General, by and large, wants, and this is not just here in Lake County, but just as a matter of policy, wants to have kind of a hands-off approach. They are the direct boss of the district attorneys, the Attorney General's office. But along with the public, by the way, because you'll have an opportunity to settle that on June 3rd. But the bottom line is they assign certain individuals who develop relationships with these other individuals, or the DAs, to handle these what they call conflict cases, where the DA has a conflict, and he would certainly have a conflict in the prosecution of his own daughter. Mm-hmm. So, but they develop relationships, and all humans develop relationships, but you have to also set up, checks and balances and walls, and I believe that she was given a pass, from my understanding of these cases, and I also believe that was wrong.
Kathy, we have another call.
Another call. Right on, Frank and man, 4 years of getting browbeat. My hat's off to you, bro, and go Andre Ross.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Hello, you're on the air. Hello, you're not on the air. Okay.
So
Peter,
I have a few questions, but let's go to one that no one ever asked.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. What decision have you regretted, or a decision you've made that you'd like to go back in time and possibly change during your last 4 years?
Gosh, I'd have to think about that for a while, but nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes.
I understand that.
So, that's a tough question. And,
well, you know what? Think about it, and before we end, you can maybe come back with something. We've got another
that's going to take some pondering, because I make dozens of decisions every day, and
I mean the ones that affect the whole public in general, or things you've done, be it communication-wise, be it physical law enforcement activities.
Yeah, what interactions?
Anything like
you
interactions.
You could have changed.
As you said, no one's perfect, and I'm just curious if there's something you say, hey, I made a mistake here, and this is what I've done to correct it, or it was a bad decision at the time, but even though I thought it was good at that point, anything comes to mind?
Yeah, let me ponder that,
okay, caller,
that question.
You're on the air.
Yes, I was going to ask the sheriff about the situation where there's traces of alcohol in the bloodstream of sheriff on duty. Is that permitted?
You can certainly ask me what question do you want to ask me? Are you talking about the accident that occurred on Highway 29 responding to the robbery?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, is it okay for Deputy Sheriff to have alcohol in his bloodstream?
No, absolutely not. That's one of the most egregious violations of policy that we have.
Okay.
And no, we do not allow any. It has to be 0.00. You cannot come on duty with any alcohol at all in your system, or any drugs for that matter of fact.
Okay. And then then the Rivas Garcia death. Yeah, that's what I was referring to. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, there's backroom deals, on status quo and corruption, et cetera. The DA's office position said that if it wasn't for the actions of the defendants, the death would not have occurred. I would think that it was the action of the sheriff that the death would not have occurred. Do you think that's correct?
Well, I can tell you this. What we did was we sent it to the CHP MATE team right away. So we, because we don't want to investigate our own, and I have a standing policy that we don't do that, the CHP MATE team, which a very highly professional group of people who are the best in the business, world-renowned actually for accident investigations, are in the process of investigating that. I recently received a notice from the CHP commander that there was going to be a delay in releasing or finishing that investigation because of the accident that occurred involving a FedEx truck and a school bus that took a lot of the MATE personnel off of this case to investigate that, which there were multiple deaths. So we're still waiting for the final results, and I can't say what I can't predict what DA Anderson will do, and I certainly can't predict what the final results are going to be. I have not seen them.
Okay. Well, yeah, you're not saying that the results of the blood tests were in the FedEx truck or anything like that, are you?
Oh, no.
Oh, geez.
Those are two separate. What I'm saying is that that they had a timeline that they had given me that would have already had the results of this investigation made public, and then,
I know that Stephen J. Brooks, when he was arrested for a DUI, his blood sample got lost in the mail.
No, none of that has happened. No, when I mentioned the accident, I believe it was on Highway 5. I say it because not all their resources, but a lot of their resources were diverted off of pending cases to go investigate that because of the multitude of deaths. It was a very tragic situation, and because of that, those resources were working on that and were unable to finish this investigation on the same timelines that they had originally given us. So I was notified that there'd be a slight delay, but we're expecting that probably within the next 30, 45 days.
Yeah, I remember reading that the report was due at the end of April.
Yes.
And so I just read about an Alameda County Sheriff's deputy was speeding and he struck and killed a pedestrian, and he was not charged with that. It happened at 4:30 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
There are cases like that. Those are the bottom line decision on whether to charge or not charge rests solely in the hands of the district attorney. But the investigation itself is not coming from our office. It is coming from the Highway Patrol MATE team. So when you see that investigation, I can tell you from my personal experience that it will be as thorough and done as well as possible.
Very good. We got to move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, you're on the air.
Hello. A couple of things. First of all, I want to thank Sheriff Rivero for the processes that he's put in line. I'd like to tell a story that happened. And this is about a young homeless man.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. We're really short of time. If you have a question for Frank, if you could just ask your question.
All right. Okay. All right. I wanted to thank him. That's for his policies, but that's okay. I'll go on. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, ma'am.
Here's my question.
Okay,
sure. Okay, go ahead.
My question is this. In the case of police lethality, if a policeman kills somebody in the line of duty, it is the department itself that does the investigation. And I want to know if there was a law that was passed that said it was the grand jury that was going to appoint a committee for every case involving police lethality. How would Sheriff Rivera feel about a law like that?
I support any type of independent review, and we do have in our sheriff's office independent review of any officer-involved shooting or any fatal incident or any type of misconduct that is rises to the level of beyond just discourtesy or some mistake. The protocol right now is that the DA's investigators would do the criminal side of the investigation, and a internal affairs investigation would trail that. So we do not do any of the investigating ourselves. I feel it's inappropriate. You should not be investigating yourself.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Oh, good. Thank you, ma'am.
That's like
Bye-bye.
a IRS revenue agent doing his own audit.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Get your next question in before we get another call.
anytime you have anyone in investigating themselves, it's subject to at least the specter of impropriety.
Absolutely.
And and sometimes that's worse than impropriety itself. Impropriety may not occur, but you still have that cloud hanging over it. So you that's not anything that you want.
Okay.
Absolutely.
During the campaign and all your radio shows and all the debates, everything is going through, it's been very evident that you are in support of Measure N. However, according to your website and according to our own conversations we've had together, you do believe in medicinal marijuana or medicinal cannabis.
Correct.
Okay, so my question here is, how can you support Measure N, meaning voting yes for that, and still say I support the use of medicinal marijuana? And I'm talking about specifically for Lake County now, not in general state of California, where dispensaries are basically forbidden except for within the city of Clear Lake. With the new Measure N is passed, basically it's outlawing anyone growing their own 2 or 3 plants at home unless you have 20 plus acres of agriculturally zoned land. So how can medicinal patients receive their medicine if N is voted for, and we've already heard that the dispensary ordinance that they said they're going to pass is being manipulated? So how can you, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Sheriff, but how can you support N if you also agree that patients are allowed the medicinal marijuana?
And how is this going to affect the big illegal grows that really are the ones at fault here, not the small growers?
Well, Phil, you're not putting me on the spot.
I'm not Phil, thank you, but that's okay.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to insult
sorry.
Phil.
I apologize, but you're not putting me on the spot. But you've made some statements that are incorrect, and I'm going to start by correcting those. Number one is you said that it prohibits anybody that doesn't have an acre from having medicinal grows. That in fact is not true.
If they're in a community growth boundary,
Yes, it
that's
is.
true.
Well, no,
Absolutely.
you're talking about outdoor grow. They can still
Right.
grow. They have 100
Yeah, but
square
they
feet.
can't-
They have 100 square feet to grow indoor.
But Frank, indoor growing is not a sustainable practice. It's dangerous. It causes fires. People are not going to stick to 10 by 10. They're going to do as much as they can fit in their house. We're going to have houses burning down. We're going to have big electric bills. It's not a reasonable answer.
And a lot of
Well,
people can't afford electricity.
We can agree to disagree on that because I believe that is going straight to the dark side without really looking at all the entire
But
picture.
it's what we've seen already.
No, it's not. It's speculation on your part, Terry.
Well, I know houses that have burnt because of grows. I know.
I know houses that have burnt because of people cooking chicken, and I also know houses that have burned because of people who are producing honey oil.
But
just,
do you
just
also know
recently,
that the medicinal quality of indoor-grown marijuana does not match what is necessary for CBDs to be high enough to be able to affect people with epilepsy?
I was hoping you were going to say that.
I'm so glad.
Because I have been reading up on that after you made that argument, and others have heard that argument repeatedly, and I have here in my hand one of many studies that I have been able to locate, and this is Cannabis Analysis and Research. This was a controlled study that was done with cloned plants using the same dirt, using the same amount of time of sunlight, except one was artificial sunlight, indoor
Right.
grow, and the other one was natural sunlight, using the same watering times. So
Okay, that's good.
it was a completely controlled double-blind study, and the results were that the largest variation was that the variation was a THC. There was a 1% difference, so there was a 1% less in THC, and I have these numbers here. And in GBDs, there was a 2% difference,
Okay.
but it was 2% more.
Okay.
At GBD,
That's one study. I'll be happy to counter back to you at a different day with the study that actually I read that said that CBD counts were lower in indoor grows. So
Well,
we
here-
have to look at the studies and see how
here
they're
you
done.
have this study. I read it carefully. I have several others, but and they all seem to agree that the CBDs, which are the active ingredient for the medicinal side of marijuana, where the THC is more of the psychotropic
Well, yeah.
side.
There's different purposes for both sides.
There was 0.7 for the outdoor grow, and on CBDs and 0.9 for the indoor grows in this controlled
Like
study.
I said, without having the information in front of me, I can't counter, and we're out of time, and we have a caller, so I will come back to you with that at a different time.
If I can I just stay on that topic for a moment, though? The reason that I support Measure N is because we have to have some controls over the just Wild West style growing that would happen if there was no ordinance. Now, as both of you know, the current interim ordinance, the emergency ordinance, expires and can only be put back in place if they make it the permanent ordinance. It can't be held as an interim
But we have an ordinance coming on in November. You read that ordinance.
And I read that ordinance, and I would love to be able to discuss that with you because I've seen a whole lot of problems with that ordinance. You sent
Then let's get together and talk about it.
But let me just say this: if Measure N is voted down, it leaves a power vacuum at the board chambers, and the board can do one of many things. They can institute the temporary or the emergency ordinance as a permanent ordinance. They can modify the Measure N ordinance and bring it back to the table and try to institute that, or they can outlaw completely the growing of marijuana in this county.
Okay, so based on that, if you can't enforce the ordinance we have now, how do you expect to enforce an outright ban? That's not going to happen. People are going to grow anyway. They're going to all be illegal. You're going to make every person in this county a criminal that's growing pot. So how does that help anybody?
Those are really what I call the cry wolf arguments.
Oh, really?
Yes, I do.
Well, if I grow my 3 plants, I'm going to be put
you say that the indoor, at least as a stopgap measure, because I don't agree.
I won't grow indoor. I'm not going to deal with spider mites. I'm not going to deal with chemicals. I'm not going to deal with that stuff. It's unhealthy.
Well, realize that when I went to the Planning Commission, and I got the Measure N late in the game, but when I went to the Planning Commission, I said we need to reinstitute dispensaries, and apparently...
And I'm not buying from dispensaries.
Oh, well, I mean...
I can't afford it, Frank. You got to look at the little guy. This is the problem with this ordinance. It doesn't look at the little guy.
Well, but the problem...
It makes them criminals.
But you're myopic in your views, because the problem could be multifold if the board, and there's 3 of them on there that have publicly stated that they don't want any marijuana growing, or at least somewhat. There's 3 of them on there that have publicly stated that. You could have a no on N on June 3rd and have a no-grow ordinance on the table within a few days
and
of that.
In November, we have an ordinance that the people are going to vote in that everybody will like and appreciate.
And I'm happy to discuss that both privately and publicly with you, but I can tell you this, that the ordinance, that ordinance that you sent to me should have been reviewed much more carefully. There are constitutional issues with that ordinance that you're getting signatures from.
Measure N definitely has constitutional issues.
I don't agree that Measure N has constitutional issues, but it does have issues. I have my own personal issues with Measure N, but I don't want to see this county without an ordinance at all. I think that would be disastrous.
I don't think it's going to make a difference because people are going to do what they want to do no matter what the law says.
Well,
that's the way it's been in Lake County for decades, and it's going to continue.
Not quite, because as you well know, we have addressed these major grows, and we have been extraordinarily aggressive, which has drawn the ire of certain individuals who claim to be representatives of the medicinal marijuana 215.
Okay, we are out of time, but we will continue this discussion.
Absolutely.
I'd be happy to come back and debate this. This is an important issue and a divisive one.
When I'm more prepared, I'd love to do that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
God bless all you out there.
I am going to put this caller on real quick because they have been patiently waiting. Hello, you're on the air. You still there?
Frank, don't panic about the sun-grown outdoor backyard organic. Thank you for keeping the powder out of the hood, and I'd really like you to get a crew together to start investigating bicycle thefts.
There you go.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I
I
can
will-
help you with that.
Thank
And
you,
Thank you.
I'll catch up with you off the air.
Thank you,
Okay.
buddy. I
Good
appreciate it.
Out of the hood,
You-
but don't worry about our backyard.
No, I want to resolve this issue, and we have to have some meetings of the mind, and we have to have input from all
Absolutely.
sides.
Thank you.
That's the truth.
That's all we ask. Listen to what people are saying, because I don't want to be a criminal, and this will make me one. I don't appreciate that. Okay, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and again, God bless
we will
everyone out there, and I
continue.
appreciate your support, and I appreciate you listening in. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Frank. And we'll
Thank
be
you.
back in a few minutes with Andre Ross. Thanks for sticking around. You're on Lake County Magazine with Terry and Pete. And this is KPFZ 88.1 FM in Lakeport and all around the lake.